Hey everybody, this is DM Mike, and today I wanted to start kind of a campaign diary. I've never done this before, never felt like I really needed to. I don't know if I really had interest because I never kind of watched anybody else's campaign diaries. But I really wanted to kind of make a recording of the things that are happening in my current campaign. This is not a homebrew campaign. This is a directly from the book, Hoard of the Dragon Queen, so an adventure book. From D&D 5th edition. And I've never ran a book before in my entire life. So this is my first time running it. Back when I was a teenager, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, that's the last time I played, we bought the books. We bought some of their modules, but we really bought the modules for two things. The maps that were included, the box sets that also had maps, and any kind of monsters. Other than that, most people I played with, and the way I played as well, was that you just made your own stuff. That's just what you did. And of course, I know there were modules out there, but I just never felt the need or desire to prep for such things. I just wanted to do my own stuff, which I think is what's great about D&D. And I think that's where a lot of people start. They start with, hey, I get to make whatever I want, and they just go for it. But anyway, so we're starting Hoard of the Dragon Queen. Now, first of all, spoilers, right? So if you've never played Hoard of the Dragon Queen and you want to play Hoard of the Dragon Queen, I'm going to ruin it for you. I mean, it's just going to be, I'm going to talk about certain aspects, not every single thing that happened in the first chapter. I would get bored of that. But just certain things that the characters did that I thought was like, wow, I never would have done that. That's interesting. But we started chapter 1 last week. We play on Friday nights. We do like 2 weeks on, 3 weeks on, and 1 week off. And I kind of felt like that's advantageous for everybody because, it's a Friday night. You want your Friday night to go out and do things and hang out and, not every single Friday night be taken up by D&D. Now, I know there's people out there that enjoy that, but I kind of felt like, hey, I want one Friday. And honestly, I think rest is good for both players and DMs. So we built that into the system. And plus, it gives me technically almost like 2 weeks to prep for the next thing, whether it's the next chapter or just a continuation of where we were at. So anyway, we are in chapter 1, and I did a beginning quest, a kind of a prologue to this. If you've read Hoard of the Dragon Queen or you've played Hoard of the Dragon Queen, it kind of just starts out. It starts out running. It just starts with people on a caravan, and they just pull up to Greenest, and it's under attack. And I know that works for some people. I get it. For me, I just kind of I needed a little bit more. I wanted my characters to go to Greenest for a particular reason and not just type that out and write it out. I really wanted to play that, So we spent the first Friday playing the prologue, and it was about 4.5 hours, and it went really well. And then we started chapter 1 just last week, so we really just got into the book. And Greenest, and what happens in Greenest was more prep I think I've ever done in my entire life. When it comes to D&D. I mean, just the sheer amount of it, the maps, something that I feel Hoard of the Dragon Queen is missing. I mean, it's just there's a lot of maps that are missing, certain mission things that are going on that you have nothing to work with. Now, luckily, some people online have just made up maps, and I found those, and those were advantageous, and it helped us all, but I was a little surprised. And I know I've said this in my art videos, but man, does it suck to go out and buy these books, but I guess they're not really doing box sets, are they? So books, and there's nothing to do. There's no maps. I know you can go get them secondhand, from the artists themselves, which is great. But I just miss those days where the map was already printed. You didn't have to go buy it separately somewhere else, then take that and go somewhere else to get it printed, and then come back and play your game. I mean, the maps are beautiful in the book. Don't get me wrong, but they're useless, I think. There's nothing to do with them. No one can play with that. Unless you're doing theater of the mind, of course. Maybe you'll be okay. But we're not. We're actually doing a digital tabletop simulator, which has turned out to be really, really nice. But anyway, so we're in chapter 1. And they roll up to Greenest, and they were there for a particular reason, but they didn't expect for it to be under attack. So they didn't go quite rushing in. They sent the thief in first, ahead a little bit, just to kind of scout the area out. And I had an overhead map on our TV screen that showed Greenest, and I thought for sure the characters would probably just go down one of the roads. There's like 3 roads, I think, on the west side of the map that they could come in. And nope, they all stood up from their tables and looked at the map on the screen and just made all these suggestions. They ended up going way down at the bottom of the map and skirted the stream that was going on there. And I just didn't expect that. Great for them. They were kind of going through the houses, trying to avoid as much combat as possible. But if you've played Horde of the Dragon Queen, or if you're running it, you know the first mission has to happen, right? Seek the keep. It's when Leona Swift, I believe, suddenly appears from an alleyway, and she's got a spear, and she's fighting a bunch of kobolds. And that all happened. And we had the two children there. One of the kids almost died. The boy was caught in an ambushed drake's jaws, so he almost ate it. I had the thief climbing up on houses and shooting down from there, which I thought was really, really great. And everybody else just kind of made mincemeat pretty quickly, I think, of that first group. There wasn't too much problem, but there was definitely some hits taken by many of the players. The kobolds do have some pretty nifty things. I know they're low level, and my guys were started at level 3, so I thought at first it would feel like a cakewalk. Well, that all turned on its head much later. But they managed to save Leona Swift and the two kids. The cleric had to step in and heal the kid because he had taken a severe amount of damage. Was almost dead. I think the woman too. They used some medicine checks, and our grave cleric again healed the boy. I think the girl was fine. Nothing happened to her. So they end up taking him, picking him up, and running for the keep because Leona said, "Hey, that's where we need to go. It's the only safe place." So they tried to skirt around and avoid. Matter of fact, they avoided 2 more groups that were just kind of going about. And during the fighting, some groups just kind of went by, didn't spot them, because it's night. The moon's halfway out. I mean, it's a half moon. There's smoke and debris and all kinds of stuff that's just I feel is messing up everybody's vision, let alone if you have night vision or whatnot. It's really hard to see a lot of things that are going on, including for the enemy. But they managed to skip 2 more groups, but they got too close. They got pretty close to the keep, but the gates were starting to close. Castellan, I think that's how you say his name. I don't know. This is what I went with. Castellan. He had 4 infantrymen out there on the gates, and they were just trying to keep the kobolds and everything away. But they could tell, and I made it clear to them that those gates are closing soon. They cannot hold that front much longer. So it created, at least I noticed it at the table, it created some instant tension, because I was looking down at my little iPhone there and watching the clock, and letting them know that, hey, the longer you stay out here and try to hide and stealth, the sooner this is going to close. So they actually ended up coming up behind another group of kobolds and cultists that were actually trying to make their way up to the keep, to actually join the fight and actually bust through the gates, which I was fine to let happen. I mean, that'd be interesting. I mean, there actually is a mission later that has a Sally Port being attacked, but I was fine with the front gates being attacked too, if they couldn't make it, or if they tried to delay the people up front, the dwarf. Anyway, so they know the gates are closing, and they have a semi-big group in front of them. And they didn't know, they realized they had to go through them. So they instantly started combat, and they did pretty good. And the problem was the gates were closing still, right? So one of my characters, I think it was our druid, hit a few people, knocked a few kobolds out, but then booked it, just kind of started running towards the gate, and she could speak Dwarven. So she yells out to Castellan, "Hey, we're friends here. We're on your side. We have some peasants. We have some people, your people with us. Don't close the gates." And of course, Castellan, hearing Dwarvish, was looking around like, what was that? Because there's only kobold and cultists out there. And so he spots them. And then I added 2 more minutes to the clock because he's like, okay, he yelled back, we'll hold the gates open, but not much longer. And so everybody's just trying to, funny, I think in their mindset was, we must destroy these kobolds, instead of maybe just hitting them or maybe taking a disengage action. But they actually tried to, as they were going through them, kill every single one of them. And of course, that started eating up time. And eventually it got to the point where people would disengage or just kind of run past. I have a few ranged characters, mainly my thief right now and our ranger, who's just, they hardly ever take a hit right now, at least. But they hardly ever take a hit. And they're way in the back. And so they had a long run to get to the keep. But eventually, people started disengaging and running. And long story short, they got to the gate right before it closed, and there was only one kobold and I think a cultist that survived that encounter. And the kobold had 2 hit points. And these guys are level 3, and that kobold almost killed the tank. He had 2 hit points left as well. I didn't know this till they got to the keep. But that kobold survived. So now he's like a veteran to seasoned kobold. He has a little bit of a cool story for him. But yeah, they got in the keep, and they started healing, doing medicine checks. Because, a lot of people actually had taken hits by then. But I decided to have the keep have limited supplies. So I made potion cards. Well, maybe I'll put something up. Potion cards that like business cards. And I put 4 out. I said, this is right now what the keep has. They're making more. They have alchemists or whatnot working on this kind of stuff. But this is all they have. And of course, our tank has 2 hit points. And the Grave Cleric did heal him a little bit, but it wasn't enough. So he ended up guzzling down 2 of the 4 of the potions. And so Governor Nighthill is there. He's talking to them. And in the book, there are at least 2 missions that I can think of off the top of my head that they're supposed to go on, or they can go on. The Mill and the Sanctuary. And I kind of presented it as, look, I have a small team. If you guys could take care of one of these problems, I'll send the team to the other thing, whichever one you don't choose. And I told them, okay, we've got the Mill, there's food here. We could be out of food for a long time. Or we have the Sanctuary where some people are holed up, we know, some families. So I think wisely, they chose a Sanctuary. And they went through the old tunnel. Now, for those who've played it or running it, I skipped the rats. I don't know. I just wasn't interested. I know some funny things have happened about that, and some people think that encounter is really, really good. I don't know. I just didn't care for it. I just wanted to get them out of there into that tunnel and face more of the armies, the different things that were running around outside in Greenest. So they did. They went down the tunnel. Of course, the gate got stuck, and the tank was up front. So he just kicked it open. I think he got a DC 18 or DC 13 to kick it open. I think is what you need, or 15. But he got he rolled an 18. So he got it open. But wow, did it make a lot of noise. So there's a group, and it comes out at the stream, right? And there was a group at the stream, kind of just looking for any stragglers. And if you look at the map, there's a stream, there's forest and forest. And so they hid in this little tiny, that's not a forest, a little tiny bush, like bushes and trees. It wasn't like a fully blown forest. But they hid in those and ambushed that group. So it gave them a surprise round. And so that scrap was pretty straightforward. There wasn't really death on the line. When this whole thing goes to hell is when they get to the Sanctuary. And this is what I found was kind of interesting. There's only 5. I got 5 players. And so if you look at the book, the Sanctuary has, I think, 6 or 7 enemies up front, and they're just banging through those doors trying to get in, right? So that's the first group they saw. And then there's another group, which is really huge. It's like 15 or 16 enemies. Like a lot of them, 10 kobolds, 3 or 4 cultists. I mean, it's pretty sizable. And they are skulking about and kind of on patrol around the Sanctuary. Well, they kind of just saw the tail end of them, but they hadn't quite gone to the other side of the Sanctuary yet. But they were there. And I remember one of the players, I think it was a thief, asked me, is there a back door? And I was like, well, I don't know, because they hadn't scouted. Well, I don't know what happened after that, but for whatever the reason, nobody scouted the Sanctuary. It was just, let's attack. And this turned out to be, might be, a pretty fatal move. We're not sure how this is going to pan out, but I know the next session is going to be hell. Because they immediately attacked the people that were trying to break through the Sanctuary's front door. And of course, that was going okay. I mean, it was 6 enemies, and they were taken by surprise. But the problem was they got one cultist down to about 2 hit points. And that cultist started to run away. And of course, what's he do? He goes and gets the large group of enemies. So he yells out to the enemies on his turn, then runs down to where the back door is, because there was a back door to the Sanctuary. But at the back door are 6 or 7 more enemies. So as they managed to wipe out just about everybody on that front at the front doors. But now they have, what is it, like 24 enemies now barreling down on top of them. Now my guys are level 3, but I don't know if they can fight through that many enemies, especially with the pack tactics that the kobolds have. So that's where they ended up. And to top it off, I was rolling to where the dragon was going to be, and it just happened to be at the sanctuary. So when we start our next session, my 5 players have 15 enemies coming down from the top, 6 or 7 more from the bottom, and they saw the smoke swirl suddenly behind them, and they heard an intense growl above. We may not make it to Chapter 2, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Even though I am prepping Chapter 2, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if as a DM, do I pull punches? Or do I just let things go, the enemy hits as hard as they're going to hit? I don't know. We're going to find out, though. I'm going to find out what these guys are made of and what's going to happen after this. Hopefully my players aren't watching this, but hopefully they retreat, to be honest with you. I mean, it seems like retreating is something that's often forgotten by players. They just want to bum rush and go through, and on top of that, I think taking prisoners sometimes is often forgotten, just keeping somebody alive so you can question them. I think it's just, those are 2 classic things I don't see very often. But we're going to find out. We actually don't play this Friday. We play the next Friday just because of schedule snafu. But you know what? I'll report back on that soon after those events. And it was very entertaining. I think people at the table felt the intensity, the tenseness, the threat of the people, of all these armies and these squads moving around and the gates closing at the keep. And then suddenly, I remember a couple people just like, oh my gosh, as the mercenary or the occultists ran out to get reinforcements, especially that really big group. And I had them turn around and see what was happening. So I believe there'll be a Chapter 2. But we have to get through Chapter 1 first. So we'll see how this goes, and I'll report back on that when after we're done with that. And that may be another session or 2. Who knows? So anyway, that's it, guys. I know I usually do art and design. I'm kind of just getting my bearings on this channel. But I will update again on this and just let you know how it turns out. And if these are not of any kind of interest to anybody on this, then I'll probably stop doing these. But for now, a lot of things are up in the air. All right, so that's all I got for now, guys, for this campaign diary number 1, and I will probably see you next week, or at least I think I will. And I guess if it utterly bombs, I'll let you know about that too. All right, okay, guys, see you in the next video.